I started using skincare right around the time that I was about my son's age now, 12 years old, junior high, preteen years. And back then, we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we were just doing whatever the magazines told us to. So I was washing my face with Noxzema because that's what the magazine said to do. I was doing all kinds of other stuff to my face that I probably didn't really need to do. The world is a lot different now. There's a lot more information out there, for better or for worse, right and wrong. And kids these days have a lot more options, they have a lot more wants, they have a lot more opinions. So when people find out that I have a kid, I often get asked questions about skincare for kids. Like, when should I start my kid on a skincare routine? Should I start my kid on a skincare routine? What products should they use? And how should I go about it? I've never actually covered this in much depth, just like a comment reply here, a DM there. So let's get to it and talk about how to start your kids safely and healthily on their own skincare routine. As always, you can find timestamp chapters in the description box. Of course, I hope you watch the whole thing, but if you just had like a couple of questions here or there, feel free to skip around. First, some really important disclaimers this time around. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not giving this as medical advice, and I don't want you to take it like that. I'm a parent. My son is almost 13 years old. I haven't broken him yet. He seems to like me okay, and he does do his skincare, so I think that's a pretty good sign for what I'm about to tell you. So please just take this not as medical advice, not as gospel, but just as advice from one parent to another. Take what you can from it, apply it in whatever way is available to you, and I hope that you can get something helpful out of it. I will be showing some example products in this video. Where they're provided by the brands, I will disclose them in the video, and any affiliate links that I earn commission from will be marked as such in the description box where I give product links. So, how do we build the best skincare routine for your kid? Obviously, the specifics will vary a little bit depending on the age, but I believe that overall, the most important thing to teach your kid about skincare, no matter how old they are, is just to instill the habit, to get them into a routine of doing the really basic skincare steps as if it's second nature, the same way that you would teach them that showering, brushing their teeth, all these kind of hygiene habits are also just second nature. That way it doesn't become something that they struggle with later on in life when they may actually care about skincare more than they do now. So with that being said, the best time to start is really, really young. The second best time to start is now. Now, I'm not saying start them up with like a full complete double cleanse, actives, toner, essence, serum, moisturizer, SPF kind of routine right away. That's going to be really overwhelming. It's really unnecessary, it's really expensive. Ultimately, it's probably going to become a huge tedious chore to them and it's going to turn them off of skincare. What I'm talking about is setting them up with the really basic, again, really fundamental aspects of skincare, the ones that are rooted in hygiene and cleanliness. So the first thing that I would instill in a kid, and that I did instill in my kid, was the habit of daily cleansing. So when they are babies, it's a lot easier because you can just use like a soft damp cloth to wash their face every time you give them a bath, and maybe sometimes in the morning or when their face gets dirty. They get used to that. Everybody does that. As they get older, when you find that they need something more than just warm water to clean their face, I say start them on what I did, which is a very, very gentle, low pH cleanser that will be gentle on their skin barrier, that won't dry out their skin, and that they can start to get used to as just another kind of soap that they use every time they bathe. So my son has been using Holy Snail's KD cleanser for years. This is the one that he's used the most and that he's just really used to using as his face wash. This brand is owned by a really good friend of mine. I have done some work for them in the past, and she did give me, she gives me his cleansers for free. So there's your disclosure on that. So we love this one, both me and my son, because it's really, really gentle. It has only mild surfactants. It doesn't have SLS. It doesn't have SLES. It is at a very optimal pH 5.5, so it's good for the skin barrier. It's not going to like damage or weaken the moisture barrier of skin. I think for kids, this is really nice too because the foaming pump and the kind of foam that it makes are really fun. So I do notice, I think that he enjoys using this cleanser a lot more than just regular like gel or foaming cleansers that just aren't as fun as this. with that being said, he is getting older. He's almost 13 and he's getting into those teenage years and he's getting into like the puberty and all that as his skin is changing, and we're noticing that he is starting to produce more oil and maybe needs some more thorough cleansing sometimes, like deeper cleansing. We're experimenting with a couple of other cleansers, and one of them is one that I've used for ages. It's the COSRX Advanced Nail Mucin Gel Cleanser, which was provided by the brand. So this is one other one that he's trying out. And there's also the Neogen Acne Foam Cleanser. This one's really new to him and it's new to me. It just came in a PR box from Neogen that I don't actually really interact with them. So I almost tossed this because I thought it was going to be way too harsh. But I tested the pH and the pH is fine, and the surfactants look pretty gentle too, so I just kept it around in case he likes it. So my opinion, the COSRX Nail Cleanser is going to be helpful for him, but he's also trying this. I don't know which one is going to end up being better for his skin at this point in time. But so there's room to adapt as your kid's skin type changes and your kid's skin needs change over time. So again, he's almost 13 years old, so this is kind of like an early puberty thing that's happening right now. I spent a fair amount of time just now going over the cleanser options that my son has, because in my approach to skincare for my kid and what I believe is the best way to introduce it to your kid, cleansing is the only daily must, because that is a hygiene and a cleanliness step. That is something that should go along with taking a shower and brushing your teeth as just something you do every day to stay clean for health, not for appearance. Everything else, in my mind, is as needed only. So we'll take moisturizer, for example. His skin is pretty normal. Again, it's starting to get a little bit more oily, but sometimes everyone's skin could use a little bit of moisture. If he tells me that his skin's feeling kind of dry or it's kind of irritated, or basically that it needs something else, obviously I have a lot of moisturizers available to him. The one we usually end up going with is COSRX Advanced Nail 92 All-in-One Cream. This is provided by the brand. I've bought this and every other snail product of theirs a lot on my own, but just so you know, this one is provided by the brand. The reason that we end up going with this is, first of all, it's a nice medium weight moisturizer that doesn't feel greasy and it doesn't feel sticky, so it doesn't feel unpleasant, which for a lot of kids is going to be a bit of a sticking point, I think, with skincare, is if it feels kind of gross on their faces, they're not really going to exercise the patience to want to just let it sit and just put up with that. It is something that sinks in and just makes his skin feel better without leaving a bunch of residue that he's going to have to be aware of. It also has enough like calming, soothing, protective properties that if his skin is really irritated, or if he has a sunburn or something, which does happen, like rarely, but it does happen, if there's something else going on that could use a little bit more healing, it can provide that without having to add another extra step on that. But again, that is definitely like as needed only. I think the important thing here is for the kid to know that these options are available if they need them. This brings us to probably the most burning question that I get asked about skincare for kids, which is, should my kid be wearing sunscreen every day the way that a lot of us do as adults? And my answer is, technically, if you want to be really rigid, if you want to follow all the best practices, yes, daily sunscreen is the most ideal habit to have, but in practice, what I think and what I have seen is that if you enforce that every day, all that's going to happen is, instead of instilling like an intrinsic motivation in your kid where they feel that they are choosing for themselves to do these steps, instead of instilling that, all that's happening is you're creating a lot of resistance, you're creating a little bit of rebelliousness, they're feeling pressured, and they're going to want to do it less and less, and those negative feelings could very well carry over into adulthood. So my opinion, as not a doctor, just as a parent trying to be realistic about these things, is unless your kid has a really fair, like very sunburn prone type of skin, I don't think it's necessary for my kid, who is mixed race, half Asian, half white. I find that it works out fine for him to reserve sunscreen for when he's going to be out for a long time, like going to the beach, going swimming, going to the park, just doing other activities outdoors for extended periods of time. In those cases, he gets the sunscreen. At this point, he is tasked to take it with him and put it on himself. He'll have some slip ups here and there, but he is associating that habit with protecting his skin from sunburns. Rather than as we do it as adults, let's be realistic, a lot of us are doing it for anti aging purposes. That's not something that we need to instill in our kids, especially not when they're really young. And this takes us to what I think is the most important part of my message about skincare for kids, which is how do we teach our kids about skincare? What do we talk about with them? So, my opinion, I don't think that it's good to frame skincare for your kid in terms of their appearance. You run a lot of risks, like accidentally implying to your kid that there's something wrong with the way that they look by the skincare that you offer. Kids already have plenty going on in their social world, their peer groups, and now online too, to make them nitpick their appearance. I don't think that that's what this should be about, coming from us as their parents. Instead, I find it most helpful, and I think that this will have the most lasting benefits for my kid and for others, to frame it in terms of how these different steps affect like the way that you feel and the health of your skin. So for example, we wash our faces, we cleanse because it's healthier and more comfortable to wash off like the dirt, the germs, the oil, the schmutz that we pick up in daily life, again on our face just the same as on our hands and the rest of our bodies. We use moisturizer because when our skin is feeling really dry, when it's feeling really tight, when, like, God forbid, it's getting chapped and you're actually starting to have like broken skin from it, when our skin is feeling like that, it makes it feel better to add moisture to it with a moisturizer. Sunscreen is a lot easier because we can just say that we use sunscreen to keep our skin from getting sunburns. Those hurt. And those can lead to more health complications down the line. So I think that taking a really practical approach that doesn't have to do with the way that you look is the best way to teach your kid about skincare. And then all the rest of the stuff, like how it affects their appearance, trust me, they're gonna figure that stuff out themselves, and they will hear plenty of that outside of you. I think that if we want to encourage our kids to do skincare for themselves as a habit that they carry on through their lives, the best way is by teaching them how it benefits them in terms of how they feel, not just how it can change the way they look. Which takes us to the final stage, which is, should my kid use actives or serums or other targeted treatments? So first of all, obviously your kid doesn't need retinoids, at least not retinol for like aging purposes. I don't think that kids need vitamin C serum because they got plenty of collagen, and we don't need to worry about dark spots and things like that because that's cosmetic. That has nothing to do with their health of their skin or their bodies. I do think that when they start getting to the age where they can start developing things like blackheads and acne, that it's totally fine to introduce, again on an as needed basis, some mild and gentle actives to deal with those. So like my son is starting to get a little bit of like blackheads around his nose that he's noticed, and they are noticeable. So I have available for him that I offer to him, and he normally will take me up on it, the CosRx BHA Blackhead Power Liquid, because this is a really mild and gentle BHA. So it's not going to be super harsh, but because it is a beta hydroxy acid, it will help to clear up those little clogs in his pores so that it looks smoother and they don't develop into more pimples and things like that. If he starts developing like under the skin clogs or blind pimples, I don't have a problem with making available to him an AHA, like a pretty mild one, like the Ordinary's glycolic acid, which is just 7% glycolic acid. I think it's fine. For anything more severe, like if your kid starts getting quite severe acne or anything else that doesn't seem treatable by just really gentle home over-the-counter treatments, I really think going to see a doctor is the best option. Like if things start getting worse than you feel that gentle products can really handle, it's time to ask a doctor, because our kid doesn't really need to be experimenting too much with stuff that might irritate his skin more without some kind of doctor's guidance. As far as like other kinds of serums and targeted treatments, again, as needed basis. So if he has problems with like irritation or redness, I have plenty of calming products that he can use. He can use snail. None of these things really needs to be a set daily part of the routine, which is my ultimate point. A lot of these things are things that some kids may start asking for and wanting to develop a more complete routine with, but if they don't, and mine is pretty casual about it, if they don't, pushing them to do that when they're not really into it, again, it sends the message that you think there's something wrong with the way that they look. That's not going to be healthy, and it's certainly not going to help them enjoy skincare on its own merits, which is ultimately the goal that we're going for here, right? Ultimately, it's a reality that the way that our kids' skin looks, the way they look in general, can affect their self-esteem. It can affect their relationships with their peers in school. It can kind of change the dynamic of their experience of school and their social lives. So with all that being said, they don't need us to tell them that there is something wrong with their skin. They need us to be neutral and supportive, to love them no matter what, but also to hopefully have the knowledge and the resources to be able to provide them with some solutions so that they can be proactive, not the brand, just the adjective. Let's put it differently. So they can take the initiative to address skin issues as they come up, because that will also build them confidence in feeling that they can solve problems that they have too. So for that reason, I do think that overall, introducing your kid to skincare and teaching your kids some of the basics of what different products can do and why we might use them is really helpful to them. I might be biased, but I do think it's true. And now we're at my last point, which is that the medium of skincare is a really good jumping off point to teach your child about media literacy. So what I said in the beginning, kids these days have a lot more information available. There's a lot more products out there. There's a lot more ways for them to hear about them. Kids have a lot more opinions these days. I hear a lot about like preteen and teenage kids asking their parents for Drunk Elephant, for example, because they saw it on TikTok or whatever. This is a really good and really important opportunity to teach your kid that what they see and hear on social media isn't necessarily real. It's a really good opportunity and important to teach your kid that creators use filters to make their skin look more perfect on camera than they ever do in real life. It's not real. It's a really good idea to teach your kid that creators get paid to recommend certain products. They're not always speaking from the heart. Creators get free products in order to promote them. I'm not exempt from this too. Like I just showed you, almost every product in this video is sent to me by brands. I chose the ones that we use out of those products, but obviously the reason that I disclose them is because just being provided those is going to weigh the scales a little bit more in one direction than the other. It's something important for kids to know. And it's really important and a really good opportunity to teach your kid that not only does not everything they see on the internet true, but also that what they hear the most, what has the most views, what has the most followers, often isn't just untrue, but there's often an inverse correlation between the amount of reach a statement or a piece of content has and how true it is, because fear-mongering and claims of miracle cures tend to draw more eyeballs and get more reach than nuanced, sourced discussions. So this is really important for kids to know, because if they see like this viral product or this viral technique and they hear about it everywhere, it's really easy to think that the reason this is everywhere is because it's true. It's easy even for adults to fall for these kinds of tricks. So much easier for kids. So let them be aware that what they see on social media, what they see on YouTube, isn't necessarily true just because it sounds good or it looks good, that they have to think for themselves a little bit. They have to look things up. They have to find other viewpoints. You just can't believe everything that you hear or everything that you see, whether it's about skincare or anything else. So teach that lesson to your kids alongside your lessons on how to best cleanse your skin and when to use sunscreen and what BHAs and AHAs do. That will serve them really well for the rest of their lives. I thought a lot before I made this video about whether I should address it directly to the kids that are looking up what skincare to use, or if I should address it to you guys, the parents. Ultimately, I went with addressing you guys because I've never really wanted to have children in my audience. At one point, I tried to age restrict my Instagram to 17 plus. Obviously, not because there's anything like vulgar or inappropriate on there that children shouldn't see, but just because like I feel that I don't want the responsibility of children coming to my platform and possibly not necessarily picking up what I'm really trying to have people pick up on. So I would rather address things to you guys, parent to parent. I hope this was helpful. You can always feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and I hope you will like and subscribe. Thank you.